Hey there, my beasts. Coming at you with another video. This one's about SoulCalibur6. I got this game for $9 from the Humble Bundle, and I've put about 58 hours into it, as you can see. About 5 of those were outside of character creation. So the other 53 hours I've spent were all on custom character creation, which you might not have heard about, but it's a pretty important part of apparently the SoulCalibur series. I thought it was introduced in SoulCalibur6, but apparently it's been around for a long time. The only other SoulCalibur I have is SoulCalibur4 on the PlayStation 3, and that one has Darth Vader in it. So that's cool.
SoulCalibur6.
But I've been working on this for a few months, I guess. A couple months, maybe a month. I've completed the first set of 100 characters, so this will be the unique category. I might fill out the custom as well, because there are basically an infinite amount of characters I could create. But today I'll just do a bit of a showcase of the ones that I have created. This was one of the first ones I made. This was Night Shrek, which is Shrek from Shrek. During when he was saving Fiona, dressed up as a knight, because I thought, I can't remember why I did this. I think it was so that the weapon made more sense. I think that was the first one that I made, and then I created the Shrek one, which looks pretty recognizably Shrek, at least. I tried to make him have the quilted sort of pants with a design on it, but that also wound up being an undershirt too, so I don't have any of the custom character packs, so this probably would have been a lot better with them. And definitely not the proudest of these ears I made for him. It's not the most convincing. But so far as weapon and style, I just chose something big and heavy because it seemed like that's something Shrek would use. And of course, the character that I created after that was a mummy. I wanted to make a bunch of different races, like pretty much a custom character for each race at least. And for the mummy, I wasn't sure what to do, so I made this. This is a reference to The Office, which is on Netflix. And this was what Dwight disguised himself as when he was interviewing for a manager position at Dunder Mifflin's Scranton branch in Pennsylvania. So I made his weapons be fire because he's supposed to be a burn victim, and there wasn't much that would make sense for him. So I chose that. Might as well go over the elephant in the room. We have Baby Yoda. Surprisingly enough, this one didn't take too much time to create. I just added some body hair, this cloak. I was trying to find different characters for a bunch of the unique equipment that I had and hadn't used for any other characters, so I found this jester hat, and it seemed to sort of work out well for Baby Yoda. I could have used like horns or one of the other sort of accessories, but this one turned out pretty well. And for the eyes, I managed to just have one heart, which created the whites for both of the eyes. This is a pretty similar sort of thing that I used for Spider-Man, and two little black apples for the pupils. And I think this is pretty accurate to what he looks like in the show. And yeah, since he uses the Force, I made him have that magic guy's power. This one is one of the first ones that, the only one, in fact, I think, that I didn't actually create. This was my little brother doing Marth. I don't know much about him. I think he's from one of the Nintendo series. I don't play them very much. I remember him being in Smash Bros, so I think he was from Zelda or something, but he looks pretty accurate. I googled some pictures of him, so that kind of checks out. But here we get to the really good stuff. I've been kind of hooked on Metal Gear recently, so I made about, let's see, I think 30 different Metal Gear characters, this being the first one and probably the best one. Kind of underwhelmingly or unfortunately, or doesn't matter, he's pretty good. Got the camo thing going on. He's got a black gloves, gun, some knives, and a cigar. I think I might adjust the cigar because it looks a bit wide, bit odd, but the bandana, the eye patch, the hair to a certain extent, the face, the camo, it all just really worked out for Naked Snake, more so than some of the other ones. But I kept moving on to the series. I skipped Portable Ops chronologically. Might go back to that one, since I just recently got it and I'm playing through it. But for Vic Boss, which is what they the foreigners called him in Peace Walker, I added these side plates, pauldron things, because they reminded me of what he has in the game and made him have more generic olive garb. And for the photo, I made the background be a waterfall, because I remember one of the missions, hopefully I'll edit a picture onto it here, that was a waterfall. Something like that. That seemed to fit in well. And I took the camo off his face. And I tried to make this look like a jungle sort of a background photo for Naked Snake, though it's bamboo. I think I got the point across. I kind of go back and forth on this one. I think it's pretty good. This one, the Punished Snake. I added lots of scars to his face. I tried to make them the most accurate that I could. Have his demon horn, which is pretty long, and the scar coming off of that. Got his eye patch. I think I got the right eye. A lot of these characters have eye patches, and they're like kind of distinguished by which eyes it's on, so hopefully I got that right. But he's still got the cigar. He's got this hand, the red robo hand he gets. And this was the only one that I made shirtless, but I think it works out pretty well. And he's got the Middle Eastern sort of towel around his neck. And more swept back hair, because he grew out his hair for the Phantom Pain. And now we get to Metal Gear Solid 1, Solid Snake. I tried to make him have the most Christopher Walken, young Christopher Walken face out there. Slimmed down the cigarette, turned the cigar, turned it white, turned it into a cigarette. I couldn't find a perfect sneaking suit, since a lot of this costumes and stuff are pretty old in this game, but I think it turned out pretty well. I'm a bit less proud of Raiden, because he's supposed to have a sneaking suit also, but it's supposed to be slimmer, and I think I got it across pretty well. I made sure that his blade was the most realistic to MGS2 as I could. But it was nice having somebody who uses a sword so the weapon makes the most sense. Here we go. We got Big Boss, and this one was pretty good. I didn't quite get the like sort of fitted shirt he was wearing. What do they call it? Button up. Yeah. Wasn't able to get that, but I got the tie and overcoat, and it looks pretty accurate to the color scheme at least. And the photo made the cherry blossom, so it reminds you of the graveyard at the end of MGS4, which this is from. Spoiler alert, I guess. I'll probably do some spoiling of the Metal Gear Solid series on the way through this, so I apologize for that. But the weapon style, I didn't really choose on what he would actually use. I sort of chose what made sense for the look and style of his character, and when you're playing the game, it makes a good bit of sense. Then I adjusted that one into a Solid Snake, which I'm pretty glad I was able to find a use for those sort of serpentine wrapped ribbons around him to sort of represent his tentacles, and I think the pauldrons and chest thing work pretty well for him, giving him that Solidus appearance. And of course he has for his weapon and style, that turned out pretty good because he has Republican and Democrat, his swords. The flag looks pretty silly. I kind of wish you could remove that, or at least change like the color of the fringe, because it has to be that gold color, but oh well. Here we've got Liquid Snake. I originally had him have the same overcoat as Big Boss over here, but it just looked too big on this guy. So I made him have the shirtless type of outfit he's wearing after you fight him on Metal Gear Rex. And for the photo, spoiler alert again for MGS1, that's him dying of fox die in the snow in Alaska. I thought that was pretty clever. I thought that was funny. And here is Snake from the second game, which didn't take too many adjustments. It was pretty much just his face and hair. And it's the same guy. And I made the background for this one for a lot of the Metal Gear Solid 2 characters be water, because I thought, you know, it takes place on water. Same with MGS1 with the snow on the background. Here we move ahead to Metal Gear Solid 4. And this is old Snake with the hood on. This is from right when you start the game, the first mission, when he's disguised as like a Middle Eastern fella. I made him have the solid eye, and I thought it turned out pretty well. Kind of looks like he has the sneaking suit on underneath, all black and stuff. Didn't turn out perfect, but it's okay. Yeah, and here are the two variants for this one is Naked Snake in the tux, because in the games you can get tuxedos variants, and for Solid Snake. The hair didn't exactly match up with that mullet, but it was the best I could really do. Here's a variant of old Snake with his sneaking suit on and his octo camo over his face. I tried to get the solid eye to go over top of the face camo, but that wasn't going to happen unless I like made an accessory that was some sort of a solid eye type thing. Maybe I could do that. The shell? That might not look too great. I'll try later. Footnote on that. Here we go. This one was pretty good. I saw the film Joker shortly before making this, and I based it off of it. I'm pretty proud of the shirt. I think this is the same design he has in the movie. And there's the little towel that he was using when he was getting his makeup on. I'm not sure about the nose. It seems a bit big, because his was just painted on. But the rest of the makeup is pretty good. Maybe I should have made his hair longer, because this is supposed to be Joaquin Phoenix, as you can tell from his name. Not any other variant of the Joker. But here we go. The Almighty. I wasn't quite sure about this cape, because it looks a bit odd, but when he pulls out his weapon, it makes a bit more sense, this whole America aesthetic. And I think it turned out pretty well. It's kind of hard to get his face right, but, you know, it's pretty unique enough that you can just, like, make his face orange, his hair sort of combed over with a weak sort of blonde, and I think it turned out pretty well. I think a bit better than his friend, his sidekick, the Wall, which I have 2 guns on him, and America cape, which sort of represents his defense of the country. And I have this big weapon with the sort of red, white, and blue. Not exactly, because it's silver, but it gets the point across, I think. And here we get back to Metal Gear with the character Vamp, which I think I based this mostly on MGS 4 and 2. No, 2 most. He was pretty similar in a lot of ways, but I think I took elements from both games. But I think it turned out pretty well. I think he's of a certain race. Yeah, he's malfested, so his eyes sort of glow, and that gives it an interesting aura, and with the sort of makeup almost on his face makes him seem hollow and vampire-y. And this was because this stuff around his belly, on his back strapped around, that counts as the undercovering, and body hair also counts as an undercovering, so I couldn't have that and body hair. So I took dirt, black dirt, made it big and on his chest, so it sort of looks like, you know, if you're looking from far away, it looks like chest hair. And I think this was the slightly better ride-in, which was the Metal Gear Rising, I guess, ride-in, which turned out pretty well, especially with his sword. I just recently changed it to red, because I think that's the one that he has at the end of Rising. That was like Samurai Sam's or Jetstream Sam's, and turned out looking pretty good. It's a slightly different sword. I think it's the same technical weapon, but it's a different cosmetic sword. It's more straighter, meant to be more cyborgy. And here we go. We have Dead Stanley. May you rest in peace. I can't remember where this exact outfit is from, but it's one that he wore at least once, pretty famously, and it sort of suits him. And of course he has his halo and his angel wings because he went to heaven, and glasses. There aren't any ones with really strong enough of just a mustache for you to do. So for this guy and for Old Snake, I had to make them have big old handlebar mustaches, which probably could be fixed if I bought the DLC, which my fellow YouTuber M64 has and is trying to get for me. This is one of the simpler ones. I made a few simple ones, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're worse. This is the blue screen of death. I tried to get that classic Windows logo, that was actually 4 different squares I had to position together. And I tried to make the little frowny face that Windows 10 makes when it goes to blue screen, and it turned out okay. And here we go. I don't have a lot of them from anime. I know a lot of people tend to make them from anime, but this was pretty much the only one I think I made. Jotaro Kujo, who obviously uses the magic thing, which I wound up using for a lot of people just because it kind of made sense. Because a lot of these people, certain weapons don't really make sense for them to use. Here we go. This is one of the ones that isn't quite based on a specific character, but sort of on a concept. This one is sort of a reference to food, and he's just a broccoli sort of a fellow. And I thought he turned out pretty well, all pretty uniformly green and with that broccoli on. That was pretty much the only one I was able to manage a afro on. Here we go. Now this one was based off of the hat. I sort of found out that it could be used for this effect, to best effect, and made his shoes. His shoes and pants are pretty accurate to what he looks like. His legs are a lot shorter in the game, but obviously this is a human sort of person, so it doesn't quite work out that way, and I thought it turned out pretty well. This is pretty noticeably Toad from Mario Kart. Here we go. Now this one is, I wanted to get a use out of this hat, so I thought it looked like something Gandalf would wear, so I made Gandalf the Grey at first, and he's gray with his staff that is, you know, a basic wooden one with a little tip on it, which doesn't quite match up to the one he had in the movie, but it's pretty close. And with this one, he's upgraded to that white staff, and he's all white and stuff. And I took his hat off, though. I think he might... No, I don't think he has a hat after he turns into the White Wizard. He just has his hair going back, but I thought that turned out pretty well. And then for Gandalf's third form, I did Gandalf the Gay, because I wanted to get a use out of this pattern, and I think it turned out pretty well. This staff looks about appropriately phallic, and turned out pretty well. Here we go. This is one of the ones that really makes me wish one of the weapons was just fighting with your hands, because it doesn't make too much sense for Ryu to be doing this. But I based this mostly off of the kimono equipment piece, and he turned out looking pretty accurate to Ryu, but not really fighting like him in the game. Here we go. Now this one was based mostly off of the mask. I was trying to find someone that would make sense to use that for, so I pretty accurately made Wesley, the Dread Pirate Roberts from Princess Bride. This one turned out really well. I think most of the parts are there, and this mustache actually makes a decent bit of sense for this character. Not a lot of good uses out of that mustache, but this one and this one also were pretty decent uses. This one, again, isn't exactly based off of a character, though there are a lot of characters you could assume it is. It's just a waiter. Got use out of the mustache and that hairstyle. Thought the weapon worked pretty well with it. And it sort of exudes a certain air. I'm not quite sure about this one, this Farquaad I made. It seems like a lot of the people make Farquaad with DLC, and the hat's a lot better and more accurate and whatnot, but it makes enough sense when you're fighting Shrek against him, and both Shrek and him are a bit pretty off because of how cartoony they are in the actual animated movie. Here we go. I made this after watching Captain America, and I thought it made sense for this sort of upper jacket part and then this lower shirt part. It turned out pretty well for making a Captain America. Though the helmet isn't exactly right, and you can't really make letters as symbols, so I just made a kanji whatever that looked pretty similar to the letter A, and it turns out pretty well. Here we go, back to Metal Gear. This is another Metal Gear Rising one. I tried to make most of the characters have like a villain they could fight that made sense, so this is Senator Armstrong, which is a good bit better than the ones I've seen online from other users. With this one I sort of changed the cigar so it makes it's a bit more realistic. And I went back and forth a lot on his hair and features and stuff. And you just can't really make him quite perfect. Quite look like he did in the game. Maybe if you had the DLC, but I don't. And here was another use of the top hat. I think this is actually the first use. But this is Abraham Lincoln. I sort of made his, based his weapon off of the time period, sort of. Because it had a lot of, you know, basic sort of flintlock type guns, and I thought that fit with his, you know, style, pretty much. Here we have from what might be, at least used to be, my favorite series. We got Fallout, Soul Survivor from Fallout 4. Got the bandana and everything, and since it's sort of like just a combination of all sorts of random garbage, it makes sense. It's pretty easy to make a custom character based on him, especially when you've got the vault suit with the 111 on it, the yellow brim, the little yellow thing right up front, and there's his Pip-Boy. I'm not too proud of that, but it turned out alright. And this guy uses the same weapon as the Super Mutant does later on, which is the supposed to sort of be the vertebrate blade from New Vegas, which was one of the games in the Fallout series. I'm not quite sure about this one. This is from Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. This is Sahelanthropus from the final fight. I think the head's pretty good. You can sort of see like the stem and everything of the apple, so it doesn't quite exactly look like the sphere on his shoulder, and it's also not connected, which doesn't really help. But I thought the weapon was all right for, you know, for what it is, for matching up to what it was in the game. Here we go. This was, I think it might have been when I found out that there were some SoulCalibur games with Star Wars characters in them. But oh no, it was based mostly on the helmet. On the helmet. And so I made this chest area with the buttons and everything, and I thought it turned out pretty good. There aren't any weapons which really perfectly match up to a lightsaber, but when you take the picture like I did there, you're able to sort of trick people into thinking it is. And here's Han Solo, which I thought was okay. The pistol is always in his hand, which I thought was kind of neat. I was considering doing it for some other characters, but it makes them look pretty janky in the actual game. But how his pants turned out with the red stripe on them. I tried to just have one red stripe, but it didn't quite work out that way, but it definitely looks pretty alright in the picture, and probably shouldn't have any red on his gun. That looks off. Here's one of the more obvious ones. You create Wolverine based on the claws, and it turned out pretty good. Got his look down with the hair and whatnot. I think he might look a bit fat, so he definitely doesn't look like he does in the live-action movies, so it's more of the cartoons and whatnot. Here we go. I guess I did have another anime character. This is from One Piece. This is Monkey D. Luffy, which I thought turned out pretty okay. He has this scar on his face, I think from when his... I think his long-lost brother sent sort of an energy thing into his face and did that, but he's also got this cross-shaped scar on his chest. And I mostly just did this because the hat fit really well. Made sense. Didn't even have to change the color. Here we go. This was the a pretty big leap for me. It was the first girl character I made in SoulCalibur6. And this is MGS1 Mei. And I sort of had to guess for her... No, there was some concept art that showed all of her, so this is all based off of that concept art. And the green background for the picture was supposed to represent, like, the, whatever it's called, the codec. I think it is. And this is her variant from what she looked like in MGS4. And I thought it was pretty stupid that the female characters have a hat like this, but there's no male variant, which would have made a lot of sense for Naked Snake, like Woody wore when he was saluting the boss's grave. A lot of this stuff would make sense if it was just added to both genders. Like this? Nah, maybe not. But most of these would make sense for male characters as well as female. Especially since you already have like some of the ridiculous female hairstyles allowable for men. Oh, I guess I had a few more anime ones. This isn't a joke. Like I forgot that I had a few more, but I think these are the last ones. There are like 3 Gokus. Here's Goku from Dragon Ball Z. He has his stick, which I think he just used at the beginning before he got all of his powers and whatnot. I haven't watched much of it. But here we have Goku Black, which I thought made a lot of sense because it's just a few variations from Goku, and then you can make his scythe. And I had very few characters with scythes, so I like to have a variety in them, so when you're playing custom characters, they don't all feel the same. Here we go. I guess this might count as an anime character too. This is Homer Simpson. I wasn't able to fit all of the letters in there, which was a pretty reoccurring problem, but I think this turned out alright once I figured out to have his 5 o'clock shadow like it is, and his weapon turned out pretty fitting. This is actually a common carbon rod from the episode where he went into space. Hopefully I'll edit in a still or two. I gotta get a water. Gonna get a water. Good water. Yeah, but this is a specific reference to an episode, and I thought it turned out pretty well. And he has that little donut in his hand, which I thought was a neat touch. I guess the picture was supposed to be sort of him having a heart attack or something like that. I don't like these ones. I think I'll probably delete them. These were the beauties from MGS4. This was supposed to be Laughing Octopus with a face camo. I made like 5 of these. Yeah, I gotta delete these, but the faces turned out pretty well. These are pretty accurate. This is the Laughing Octopus, Raging Raven. They all have very unique faces, which for some reason seemed easier to do with the female characters than the males to get the faces right. There's Crying Wolf and Screaming Mantis. Now we're going back to MGS1. We've got MGS1's Meryl, which turned out pretty well. I was sort of on a female character kick at this point. I think all of the female characters I made were from Metal Gear. And here's MGS4 Meryl, which is mostly the same with a few key differences. Did I add earrings? Yeah. The earrings were pretty signature for the MGS4. And this was, I think, right after the Game Awards, because I was really excited for the Dark Alliance game that's coming out. Not for the trailer, but I thought this turned out pretty well. I went on some concept art from him. Not necessarily concept art, but the art seemed pretty consistent, surprisingly. And these are all meant to be sort of them in Icewind Dale, so they all have sort of warmer clothes, or at least that scarf on for all of these characters. And I thought this one turned out pretty well. Sort of has the blue and red scimitars, which turned out pretty alright. And we got his friends Wolfgar. This one turned out pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. And I like this one because I specifically made on his shield the foaming mug pattern that's supposed to be on it canonically. Thought that was neat. I sort of ran out of ideas at this point, and I sort of made more obscure artistic ones. Like this one is just, he has AirPods. Something like a joke about like people like not being able to hear AirPods, so they like run in front of traffic or like step into a lake or something, so they die. But he's got all these fancy clothes on because he can afford AirPods. And then I had these two apples, which are supposed to represent Apple. Yeah, I don't know about that one. This one was pretty alright. Took me a while to get it, but it's not too bad. This is supposed to be a super mutant from the Fallout series. Sort of something to fight the Soul Survivor against, and it turned out pretty well. It was the only one I think that I made that was of this race, because it's pretty specific. Oh, though with those pointed ears, I kind of wish I made Shrek his race, but comme ci, comme ça, I think is the term. This is one of the later ones I made. The outfit's pretty good. The tie and tunic, I guess, work out pretty well. They're pretty reminiscent of the Flintstones, and this axe makes a lot of sense too. But the physical body just doesn't make much sense because it's a cartoon, and it's hard to replicate that. This is Jimmy Kimmel. Here we have Link from the Zelda series, and I'm pretty half and half about this. I thought the ears fit pretty well. This is one of the only characters that has that. The boots and leggings fit pretty well, but I couldn't figure out something for the upper body, so I made it chainmail that was as light as possible, but it still looks like chainmail and not like a shirt. And the weapon's alright. Doesn't quite, it's kind of got the Hylian shield vibes. It's the right shape and mostly the right colors, but not perfect. But I'm not a Nintendo guy, so I don't know it too much. This one is one of the more interesting ones, I think, because I started making an angel, or whatever that race is technically called, and it sort of wound up being this pistachio man. And I could have made him not be an angel or whatever that race is called, the Lost Soul Winged. But I wound up doing that, and it looks pretty good. The wings sort of throw off the pistachio-ness a bit, but you can get past it when you're actually playing the game. It doesn't really create too much of a disconnect. Quite a bit later I thought to do the Goku Super Saiyan version, which changes his hair color, and I think that's it. And the picture, but yeah. I think I might have changed his face. This one is really good. I'm really proud of this one. This is a Master Chief. I was able to create his visor and eye shield, whatever thing, and it turned out pretty well. This weapon with its color scheme and general look, though not quite accurate to the energy sword, it really gives off those vibes, and it turned out pretty well. Pretty proud of that one. This one too, I had to do some interest. It's really interesting when you use some different items to sort of simulate things that they weren't intended to. Like Adam Jensen's lenses for his glasses are just 2 apples that I made orange, so they're, well, I guess you could call them oranges. But I got the trench coat. The from a while away, it looks a lot better for the eyes. But got his at least one robotic hand, and it looks pretty good. And much like with Big Boss, I just did the thing that sort of thematically makes sense with the character. And I think I like the photo. It's got the vibes of the game, at least. Here I have Scrooge from A Christmas Carol. This is his mean variant. And here I have, of course, his nice variant, where he has been given the red scarf by Beaker, and he has learned the flaws of his thinking, and he's turned around. So it's interesting to fight these two against each other and sort of see which one wins. This one, I really like the picture I was able to do for this. It was the only one where I got bars on the front of it, but this is pretty clearly Jeffrey Epstein, who is a character from the news, and he obviously, this is one of the few characters with things floating behind them. I usually do that to make it sort of more artistic, to represent something else, like I did with the Apple AirPods guy. Made that sort of represent how Apple sort of floats over him and is his conscious. It sort of takes over the good and the bad, the angel and the demon conscience, and this represents well, this is really up to your own interpretation, I would say. Here we have another one that I made because I wanted more Scythe users. This is the Grim Reaper, which I thought turned out pretty well. It sort of got Scythe user and Skeleton Man, whatever it's called, Revenant, both in one go, and it's very simple, but it turned out pretty well. This one I quite like because I saw a heavy custom character made by somebody else, and it was okay, but I quite like this one. It turned out pretty well with his eye patch, his do-rag, and it's one of the few that makes a lot more sense with a weapon from this game, with the Claymore. Because a lot of people, I sort of had to make something up for them to use as a weapon, but that one made sense. And this one was, of course, purely based on the Trident, but this one actually turned out quite well with his pretty standout color scheme and hairstyle and skin color. It all turned out pretty well to be a Aquaman from the recent movies. This one I was considering for a while, but I eventually got down to making and kind of regret it. I just thought that this cloak, this shirt and whatnot sort of made sense for it looked very Skyrim, but I think it looks more Mage's Guild than just royalty, but oh well. And the crown was really hard to do because I started out just using a tiara model from the equipment, but obviously that was a bit off on him, so I sort of combined 3 things into something that sort of made sense. But it's okay. This is the only Elder Scrolls one I think I have that's sort of based on Elder Scrolls Greatsword, I guess. I'm really proud of this one, actually. I'd been watching a bunch of Phineas and Ferb recently due to Disney Plus, of course, we have that. And using a couple, you can see a few of the 3 items all used on the head there, and they worked out pretty well, because in the anime his eyes are a bit more out of his head than normal people, so I thought I'd represent that with this. And of course the shape of his head I made into this, and I think it turned out pretty well. Though his weapon, I sort of just chose something that sort of fit his style, his intimidating sort of style. And this one's pretty neat. I think this is the last Fallout character I made, though I could definitely make more. This is Benny, as portrayed by Matthew Perry, of course, in the game. And his suit turned out pretty well. I mostly picked it because checkered suit would make sense. It was one of the patterns I wanted to do, and you can do a lot with those patterns, so I was pretty cool about that. And I made his sword sort of represent Maria, his weapon, as much as I could. I got the same color scheme, the same sort of feel of a one-handed sort of thing. That's very engraved. Here we go. This is from one of my favorite games, Minecraft. You might have seen this one in my latest Minecraft parody, Toss a Diamond to Your Creeper, I think it was. And this one turned out pretty okay. The head wasn't very detailed, but I guess I wasn't able to make a lot of items for it, so I'm pretty happy for it. I think that I might make a Herobrine variant in the future, but that's going to be kind of difficult with all 100 slots taken up, so I'll get back to you on that. But I think his weapon turned out pretty well. It's pretty clearly a diamond sword, as close as it could be to the one in the game. And his clothing was very simple to do, so that turned out pretty well. Here we have Thanos. This was one of the first custom characters I saw made by someone else, and I had my own go at it, and I think it turned out pretty well. There wasn't really a way to have him have one gauntlet, but I think this one turned out pretty well with the different colors and the lines leading to it from the fingers, and this other one I sort of just made blend into his skin as much as possible to make it not too noticeable. Because it's really about the other one. And in the picture I made sure to capture that, because he's in, I believe, Wakanda it was. That's sort of what the background is supposed to represent. And here we have, I've never actually played any of these games, and I never will, I don't think. But this is Joker from Persona. It was actually kind of difficult making this mask, because if you look very closely, you might tell that it's actually 2 masks, because it's supposed to sort of have that black inner part and then the white outer part, which took me a bit to make, but it turned out pretty well. I looked up some pictures, and it seemed like this was the sort of weapon he used in the game, though the colors might not be entirely accurate. I think I'll fix those right now, because he's sort of got the whole game's sort of got this red color scheme, it would seem. Red and black and white. There we go. That makes a bit more sense, I think. Though once again, I've never played the game and never will. I've seen some of my friends play it, and okay, these ones might not make too much sense, but they're a bit more personal jokes. This is one of my friends, Cole. Yeah, he has a YouTube channel, link in the description. But this outfit was sort of based on what he wore during my update video for the day it was snowing right after we watched the Joker. And this turned out pretty well, especially for his outfit. And this katana is actually based off of his real katana, which I sold to him. And that turned out pretty well. And this is sort of based on me, the Zhazi the Beast character. I don't know what weapon I did. I guess that one just because I thought it was cool. And it turned out pretty okay, I think. Here was a friend that was on just one of our podcasts, but a few of my videos, and he's Scotty. I originally created this just because I thought I could make a VR headset type thing with a rectangle and a bandana, but I eventually sort of evolved this into a character for my friend. Really co-host of the podcast. And this YouTuber, Lizzie Mayton, who's... I'll try to put the link to her channel in the description. She was only in, like, one of my videos and maybe a couple of Hunters. M64s, that is. And I thought this was pretty accurate to her. It's based off of her YouTube name, of course, Lizzie Mayton, because she's a really popular YouTuber, and I thought this sort of represented sort of what she's become since her videos have blown up. And this is, of course, M64 from YouTube. He's in a lot of my podcasts. I think all of them, actually. And he's a really good co-host. He's pretty good at it. He introduced me to this game, so I made him in it. And these are all formal variants of Kolya, Zhazi TheBeast, and of course Hunter, M64. This one's weird. His chest is very... It's really difficult with the faces, because you can't manage them like you can in something like Fallout 4. You just have some presets. This one I thought turned out pretty well. The weapon, again, doesn't make too much sense with this character. I wish there was just like a couple melee weapons you could choose, but nevertheless, this is Pepsi Man. I believe that chain around his neck is canon, and I tried to recreate the Pepsi logo as much as I could on his chest, which I think turned out pretty alright, and he's pretty recognizable. I believe this was my final Star Wars character I made. This was Darth Maul, which was mostly based off of the sword, which made a lot of sense since it's a double-bladed sort of doohickey. But I made his spines that poke out of his head, and it doesn't look too convincing, but it's a bit better than the actual movie makeup, so I thought that and the face paint sort of made up for it. And we're getting to the final stretch here, just 10 more. Here we've got another cartoon character. I did a few of these. This is Johnny Bravo, who I thought turned out pretty well with his small lower body and massive pectoral and arm muscles. And I tried to make his hair blonde too, his body hair, but I think it looks kind of green because it's also black. So might change that, but his the rest of him looks pretty good. For the sunglasses, I had to I think reverse a pair of horns because there's no actual sunglasses. Because the equipment actually, the square glasses, this isn't exactly shaded or clear, which is kind of terrible because it's never shaded enough to block out the person's eye and actually look like sunglasses. But you also can't make it clear enough to exactly look like normal glasses, so so that's not great. But the character turned out pretty well. And here I have Fred Jones, who is the character from Scooby-Doo. I picked this character because he made sense with his color scheme and his tie, which made a lot of sense in this, so he's pretty easily recognizable. The face wasn't quite right, but that's pretty common for these characters. I'd been considering this from the beginning due to the spider pattern you can do on your spider web pattern you can do on your clothes, but I only did him like yesterday, and it's all right. I definitely think the pants are good. Like that's a good shade of blue for Spider-Man, but the eyes aren't quite right because, like I said, they were from one singular heart, which I sort of pushed out of his head and made both of the eyes. But he's pretty recognizable as Spider-Man at least. And I wish that the spider could be more solid black because it looks more like it's a sprayed on thing or something. But oh well. And I should probably add a secondary spider, like a bigger one on his back, but I can always work on these later. And for some other superheroes, I made this Mr. Incredible from The Incredibles. I sort of made this eye onto his chest using the yin-yang as the dot on the eye, because you can't make circles that small. It'd look too big, but I thought it turned out pretty well. This looks pretty much like Mr. Incredible does, and I based this mostly off of the bandana, like, eye thing, whatever it is. The eye mask. Which was kind of difficult to do on different characters. And with relatively few modifications, I made a Dash, but he acts pretty differently and a lot faster, and it makes his character a lot more unique from his father, Mr. Incredible. Because his weapon, I believe, yeah, for a lot of weapons that were strong, it just sort of made something big and heavy that fit their color scheme. But those two characters aren't too bad. And I think this is the final road. Some pretty good ones here. We've gotten Demon Spidman PS... this is a demon from Spider-Man on the PS4, which I thought made a lot of sense with that mask. This was pretty much the only way I found to use that mask, and it turned out pretty well. And it fit well with the business suit and whatnot. The shield and sword kind of work, I think, because they're supposed to be that negative sort of blue-black whatever material that makes up their weapons, but it didn't quite turn out perfectly. And here, a couple of these I was really running out of ideas, and I wanted to make the full 100 before I made this video, so I made this this character, which was a bit more obscure, which is the I think the only one based on this race, which is Malfested Mutated. And I call him Mr. Velveeta. He's supposed to sort of represent what Velveeta cheese is, at least in my life. And I think I got it across pretty well. He looks pretty good, pretty striking visually, as he attacks with his cheese slicer. Now I gotta get rid of some water. Alrighty, I think there's just 3 more characters left to go through. We've got, and these are some pretty good ones. Alright, here we go. This is pretty much going from, well, never mind. But this is one of the, I think this is the only one besides Thanos that uses the Darksider race. But I sort of represented this based on summer and sun, in which you can be sunburnt pretty easily. I thought this guy looked pretty sunburned. So I put him in a t-shirt and some shorts, some flip-flops, and sort of called him SPF 0, which is supposed to represent, like, no sunscreen. So he got burnt. And second to last one, I created this Mr. Beast, which is, I quite like making more modern of characters, but it's kind of difficult, so you gotta make simple ones that use like t-shirt and shorts. So SPF 0 and this one sort of fall into the same category, but I was able to pretty well represent his logo on his t-shirt, which I thought turned out pretty well, though not perfectly. And with his weapon, I sort of had to go a leap a bit, but this is supposed to represent like money. It's supposed to be like a dollar bill sort of thing, because it's a big green rectangle. I think I got the point across pretty well, at least. And finally, I made Geralt of Rivia. This is the Henry Cavill version, and I thought it turned out pretty well with the eyes, and the hair's all right. The face is pretty representative of it. I'm not sure. I'm not certain about this pattern on his clothes that's sort of supposed to represent the studded leather from the show, but it didn't turn out perfectly. But the weapon I thought was pretty fitting for him. So that turned out pretty well. And this was the most recent character I made, and I'm pretty proud of him. He looks pretty good while fighting, and I think that makes up all 100 of the characters. There's this one in the other tab, but this is supposed to just be a default one that, I hope the music wasn't too loud. This is supposed to just be a default one that I'm gonna, copy and paste over and, make my own characters in this. Because most of the ones off of online aren't great. Because, yeah, something like Kaneki, it's either a custom, like, OC, or something super obscure from like an anime or something. Okay, this one's pretty. This one's not bad. I really like how they use the symbols to their fullest. Because you can't have letters in there, but you can sort of guess with them. And, yeah, this one I like. Oh yeah. So I guess you can't get characters that you don't have the DLC for. But yeah, most of this is just weirdo obscure stuff. We're just like it's good in some ways. Like the suit is okay, but there's no features on his face, and Captain Picard isn't that old, but he looks more featured than this. And the little triangle, like it gets the point across, but it's not great. See a bunch of weirdo stuff. Ayun Puel, 2B. That was okay, but wait, isn't she a DLC character? Yeah, a lot of these are DLC characters, which I think is funny, because people don't want to pay for DLC, especially in the time leading up to the release of a DLC character. A lot of people make them, and that's sort of why I made Geralt. Though I think he's pretty reasonably distinguished from the Geralt that's already in the game. And I think it's funny that I recreated someone who's already in the base game. And I think I'll just finish this off with a sort of fight between the two Geralts to sort of illustrate how different they look. And I think mine doesn't look too bad. I think he looks pretty accurate to what he does in the show. And the show's pretty alright, I think. I've gotten like 3 episodes in, and it sort of picks up, maybe. But I like it when it has the short sort of things, the short episode-long stories. It's pretty nice. Yeah, I might say that my character doesn't look quite as good as the other one. But they definitely look very similar. Just his is like more detailed and whatnot. Crap. I hardly ever fight against very hard, so I usually choose hard, so this might be a bit difficult. And I lose a lot of the time to hard. Like 40% of the time, so. At least I can't say that, you know, his character is OP, since they're actually quite similar. No! Flip! Yeah, I think my character looks better from further away. How did that hit? That's nice. Okay. Yeah, this character looks a lot better from further away, especially with this pattern that looks so basic. Ah. I want to get at least 1 kill. Ah, no. Yes! Okay. Yeah, I think I'll get 1 kill. No. Or not. And this is a pretty common occurrence with custom characters. Once you fight them and knock their clothes off, they make a bit less sense. I actually added this chainmail design to his underclothes to make him make a bit more sense, but now that I look at it, I think it makes a bit less, actually. No, don't kick me off the ledge. You did. Okay, I guess the default Geralt that you already have made by the developers is a bit better than mine. But let me know what you think about my characters, what you think the good ones are, if you want to. Let me know if you want me to do another 100. Maybe there's a unique challenge I could do for all of them. But I think a lot of these turned out pretty good. It's a lot of fun to bring my friends over and play as them, especially since most of my friends have their own characters, and I would very much recommend the game if you want to play as a bunch of custom characters. You know, Phineas Flynn versus Donald Trump is quite a good combination. So see y'all next time. I love you.